Okay, what is up, everybody? I hope you are having a great day. This is the Black and Intellectual live stream, episode 20, and it is March 19th, 2018. And I just want to give a shout out to everybody who supports the stream. I want to give a shout out to everybody who watches the streams, whether it's live or whether it's the replay. It really means a lot to me. And it really shows you that it's great being around people, and it's great building with people of like mind. So I just want to do that before I really get into the stories that I want to go over today. Just want to give a shout out to everybody that supports the live stream. So I have on Twitter, last night on Twitter, I was tweeting, and I told everybody that this is going to be a really long live stream, and I don't really know if that's the case now, because now that I'm faced with live streaming for perhaps 2 hours plus, I typically don't like doing my live streams that long. So, but I do have 5 stories that I want to go over. 5 important stories. Two stories are actually updates. So the first story I'm going to go over is an update on what happened with Marielle Franco in Brazil, and some of the data and some of the research that's come out in the past few days with regards to that. I want to talk about a group of white supremacists in Kansas who are currently standing trial for an attempted bomb plot against Somalis. Now, this was back from 2016. I'm bringing this up today, though, because, first of all, what's going on in Austin, Texas, right now, like, this is just breaking news right now about what's going on in Austin, Texas. So it's a continuation, and it does show a trend that this has been going on for a couple years now. And it's usually targeting people of color. It's usually targeting black people. So I want to talk about what's this attempted bomb plot against Somalis from 2016 that was foiled, and how those guys are standing trial now. I want to touch on the Cambridge Analytica story. I'm not going to go too deep into it because that's honestly a really that would take too long, honestly, and that's one of the main reasons I said on Twitter last night that I might be talking for 2.5 hours, because I was really going to break that down. But honestly, I'm going to give most of the important information about that story, and then I'll leave you guys to read the meat and potatoes of the story if you want to. And Kris Kobach is back in the news because he has been exposed in court because his fraudulent voter suppression schemes don't hold up because there's a severe lack of data behind them. And then lastly, I want to talk about this story in Tennessee about how that state has fined residents nearly $100,000 for braiding hair without licenses, which sounds just absolutely ridiculous, but it's the truth. This is actually happening. So let's get started. The first story I'm going to bring up is, like I said, let me give an update about what's going on with the investigation into the assassination of Marielle Franco. Now, this is from the Rio Times. It is a English publication for Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, or it's news in English. And something you have to keep in mind with even a lot of these establishment outlets in Rio and in Brazil, it's very similar to establishment outlets here in the United States. Things are glossed over, things are kind of covered up, things are whitewashed. And you have a particular narrative that they try to push, because what's happening in Rio right now, this has been getting wall-to-wall coverage for a week. There have been protests that have been going on, like huge protests that have been going on, and you're seeing the power of online activism. You're seeing the power of social media activism. So you have the establishment down there. You have the establishment in Brazil trying to, get a grasp on this story. So I'm going to read this to you guys. So just keep that in mind. The ammunition used to kill Rio de Janeiro Councilwoman Marielle Franco and her driver on Wednesday night came from a lot sold to the federal police in 2006 and stolen from a post office storage facility in the state of Paraíba, confirmed Public Secretary Minister Raul Jungmann on Friday night. So the bullets used to murder and assassinate Mario Franco came from a storage lot that was owned by police. And it even gets even stranger than that, because you have some people out here who are saying, it's not the police, it's not the military police, it's not, you have people who are trying to put it on the gangs. And that honestly sounds like some establishment cover-up type talk. And that's because I had some people in the last video I made about, well, really one person in particular, and in the last video I made about Mario Franco, who was trying to, I noticed it was trying to deflect and take attention away from the police and the military police and try to put it onto the gangs. And look, the drug gangs and stuff like that. That might be possible. We all know from the stories that we see all the time when it comes to Brazil. We know that's definitely an issue down there in that country, especially in the favelas. So that's not outside the realm of possibility. Okay, but there are some things coming out about this assassination that's just very strange, and we already know that the police and the military police down there attack the citizens and murder the citizens with impunity. We know that. So now it's a step up, to start murdering people on the city council. Like that's a whole different level of dictatorship. Okay. But let me just continue. Let me continue with the article. This is a quote. It says, quote, "The federal police has already opened more than 50 inquiries due to this unaccounted ammunition. I believe that these shells found at the scene of the crime were effectively stolen," said Jungmann. And again, Jungmann is the public secretary minister. So that's somebody in the establishment. So they're trying to say that these bullets were stolen. And again, look, that's not outside the realm of possibility. But let me not speculate. Let me just continue with the article. The official also links this to a lot of ammunition to the one used in Sao Paulo's metropolitan area in August of 2015, where in a single night, 17 people were killed in several spots around the region. 3 military police officers and a local police officers were convicted of the crimes. That is very important information. And that is information that people who don't want to believe the police or the military had anything to do with this, they're going to gloss over that. Okay, you had these same bullets, used a few years ago in a mass killing spree, basically, that killed 17 people in several spots, in the same region, and they found 3 military police officers and a local police officers who were guilty of that. The same bullets that were used to kill Mario Franco. So that's not a coincidence. According to a report aired on Global TV's main news program, the batch of ammunition in question contained 1.8 million bullets, which were distributed to many federal police units around the country. Okay? The report said that bullets from this lot were also used in crimes involving rival drug trafficking gangs in Rio's metropolitan area of Sao Gonçalo between 2015 and 2017. So they're saying the bullets were also used in turf wars between rival drug trafficking gangs. Let me tell you something. There was a story, and I've mentioned this story several times before, that came out at the end of 2016 about the Chicago Police Department. And this was in The Intercept. And it was about how it was exposed because of some whistleblowers, some good cops, came out and exposed this massive crime ring within the Chicago Police Department where they were basically running a protection racket, where you had the cops fueling a lot of the gang warfare in Chicago, in the south side of Chicago, because they were protecting and working with certain gangs against other gangs. So when I'm reading this, it sounds very similar. Okay, it sounds very similar to that Intercept story. All right, so yes, you have these bullets being used in turf wars between rival drug gangs. That doesn't mean that the police aren't still involved. That does not mean that, especially given the fact that we already know and it's been established that these bullets came from a lot owned by the police. You see what I'm saying? Like, so that's very, very suspect. Okay, that's incredibly suspect. Okay, so we shouldn't be ruling anything out, quite frankly. Give me a second. Let me that's incredibly retweet. Let me share a few things. Let everybody know I'm live. Get my YouTube link shared on Twitter. All right, so that looks good. All right, so let me continue with the article. Just keep that in mind, because just because the bullets are being used by rival drug gangs, that doesn't really mean anything. Well, it means something, but it doesn't mean what they're trying to make it mean. Meanwhile, police believe that the killers involved in the assassination of the councilwoman and her driver followed Franco for several days before the crime. So that's not necessarily unusual. It just means that it was premeditated. An aide to the lawmaker said she was approached by a stranger earlier this week, asking about Franco's schedule. Okay, so videos from street cameras around the building where Franco held a meeting on Wednesday night shows a car following the councilwoman's automobile as it left the area. Police believe that is how they knew where Franco was sitting, since the automobile had tinted windows. Of the 9 shots fired, 5 hit the lawmaker. Miss Franco was shot to death after leaving a town meeting in the Central District of Rio de Janeiro. She was a human rights activist and a favela community resident who recently was chosen by the city's legislature to monitor the military intervention issued by President Michel Temer for the state of Rio de Janeiro. Now, that's also very interesting. I mentioned that on the last show that I did, where I talked about her assassination. She was actually chosen, as the article states, to sit on a panel, basically, to monitor the military intervention. So you had a very leftist, very socialist, very outspoken woman who represents the downtrodden and represents the underrepresented in her community, who is overseeing a very controversial thing where the military is being given control over policing duties in the local area. So this is basically looking like a military occupation. Okay, so that could have been an issue for some people. Okay, because perhaps they didn't want Miss Franco breathing down their neck about every little thing they were doing, especially if they end up killing more people. You know, but again, we don't really know what happened. You know, that's speculation on my part, so I'm just putting that out there. So let me see if there's anything else from this article. Okay, so there's nothing else from that article from the Rio Times that I care to read. That's the gist of that article. Now, there's an article from the Intercept that was just written today. It actually went live today, and I'm not going to read the whole article. The article is entitled, just as U.S. media does with MLK, Brazil's media is trying to whitewash and exploit Marielle Franco's political radicalism. And the gist of the article is basically that Brazil's largest media outlet, Rede Globo. And look, I don't speak Portuguese, so I might be all kinds of butchering these names and stuff. But that's my That's my American way of saying this, pronouncing this name. I'm just gonna call it Rede Globo. And they're basically, like I said earlier at the beginning of the stream, they're trying to get a hold of this story. And again, like I talked about on the last stream about the similarities between, political activism by black people in America and the similarities between that and the political activism of black people in Brazil. The reactions are very similar. I mean, it's not identical. You know what I'm saying? You don't have a military occupation in, a downtown U.S. city. It's still they still have the regular police in charge until there's a major protest with black people. Then it starts to look like a military occupation, but that typically doesn't last forever. What's going on in Brazil is something that's lasting. It's looking like it's going to last for a while. So there are differences, but there are a lot of similarities. And in many ways, you're seeing the same thing with the media coverage, where in this Intercept article, it's being explained that they're trying to get a hold of the narrative. I keep telling people the power of independent media, independent black media, how powerful this message is. Okay, we're talking about changing narratives. We're talking about defining narratives. We're talking about creating our own narratives. And you even see the power of this in a country like Brazil among people who are completely powerless, but they are creating their own narrative around this assassination. And the establishment figures down there don't like that. So they're trying to basically whitewash Mario Franco's political activism. And they're de-emphasizing her activist work and what she stood for and things like that. And they're using very universalist language to make it more appealing to some of the white Brazilians in the area who are kind of complicit with, just like here in America, where you have a lot of people who are complicit with state violence. It's no different in Brazil. You have people down there in Brazil who are complicit with a lot of the stuff that goes on to Afro-Brazilians and brown Brazilians down there because it's not happening to them. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just going to read two paragraphs that I saw that I wanted to bring up. It says, there were parts of Fantastico's reporting that were genuinely informative and journalistically excellent. Particularly Sonia Breedy's detailed evidence-based exposition of how this horrific crime was carried out with such chilling professionalism and competence, convincingly showing that whoever engineered the murders knew exactly how police would investigate and exactly how to prevent detection. That is critical information. If we were just talking about some random drug dealers who, maybe they have a lot of interaction with police because the police are always present in their communities, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to know how the police are going to react. That's not the same thing as having behind the scenes sort of detailed information about how the police react to crimes and how they're going to react to stuff like this. So the fact that whoever, as the article says, whoever engineered the murders knew exactly how police would investigate and exactly how to prevent detection, that's another red flag. Okay? And then the next paragraph says, that terrorizing fact is an important piece of the puzzle when understanding who murdered Mario an important piece of the puzzle when understanding who ordered Mario to be killed. Whoever killed the activist who devoted herself to denouncing police abuses is intimately familiar with how the police function. All right? So I'm telling you, me personally, what I feel, okay, and again, I will keep saying this is speculation on my part, but what I feel is that there's a considerable chance that some person in power was behind this assassination. Is it impossible that it was a drug person, a drug trafficker or something like that? That's not impossible. Okay, but it's also not impossible that someone with a lot of power and with a lot of privilege and who had a lot to lose, and most importantly, didn't want someone as popular as Mario Franco gaining more political power in that country, saw an opportunity to do something to her, like murder her and assassinate her, and took that opportunity. That's definitely not impossible. Okay, they already have cops in previous instances who were found guilty and convicted of murdering civilians. Now, like I said, it's a step up to start murdering people on city council, but you have an instance from a few years ago before where you had a judge who was murdered. Now, I'm not sure if that was a cop who did that or if it was a drug trafficker, but it's just real crazy, man. It's a real crazy situation, and I just wanted to provide that update about the bullets and where the bullets came from. Okay, and because that's an important part of that story. So as more information comes out, I will cover it in the future. So let me move on to the next story. All right, let's move on to the next story. So white supremacists in Kansas stand trial for attempted bomb plot against Somalis in 2016. That's my headline for this story. I came across this story from Atlanta Black Star, and the title of Atlanta Black Star's, article is "Militia Member Turned Paid Informant Helps Authorities Thwart Bombing Attack on Somalis Living in Kansas." Now, like I said, this story is from 2016. So this story, I'm not talking about something that just recently happened. They're just now standing trial. That's why the story is now being, talked about, more recently in on a few publications and on a few platforms. But this story ties into what's going on in Austin, Texas right now. I wasn't even planning on talking about Austin, Texas, because I talked about Austin, Texas on the last show, episode 19, and there wasn't really any major update in the story. Then last night, as I was getting together the stories that I was going to do in today's show, today's live stream, I saw that there was another bombing. Okay, so I was like, oh my God. So there was another bomb that went off in Austin, Texas last night. This is the fourth terrorist bombing in a major U.S. city. Okay, and the media they're covering it. Like before I went live today, I saw MSNBC and CNN covering the what do you call it? The press conference. They were covering the press conference that it looked like the police investigators were giving in Austin, Texas live not too long ago. Like I said, it was like an hour ago. And so, CNN and MSNBC were covering it, but it's still not the same. It's not the same, fear mongering, and it's not the same emphasis that they put on it when it's a Muslim. Okay, and we all know this. They give that stuff wall-to-wall coverage. Okay, so the media has been real funny style. Trump is silent. Trump is completely silent. He has, as far as I'm aware, he hasn't said anything about it at all. Okay, and the police are acting like they don't know what's going on. Now, look, I'm gonna give them some wiggle room, but because these bombings are they keep occurring, and so that's like they have to keep adding new incidents to their investigation. Okay, but if a month goes by, if 2 months go by, if 3 months go by, and look, I know you have cold cases. Okay, they have a whole show called Cold Cases. Like I know about, I've watched an investigation Discovery from time to time. I know that you have cases that go unsolved for years, a lot of times, even decades, even. Okay, so it's not outside the realm of possibility that they just may not have, any good information, any good evidence to find who's behind this. But come on now. You have all of these cameras in Austin, Texas, I'm sure. I'm sure they have cameras all over the place in Austin, Texas. Somebody knows something. And I've, like I said, I'm not gonna say that they're involved or they know more than they're letting on. I'm tired of these situations where something is happening to black people, and they're even saying now on MSNBC, I saw they're saying now that the two victims most recently in this fourth, two male victims in this fourth explosion were white. Now the thing about that is that could be a diversion because a lot of people were believing at first that these attacks were racially motivated. It might not even be the same bomber. It could be a copycat bomber, or it could be somebody who is trying to throw off the scent of the police. And so we don't know. There's too much that we don't know. So we really can't rule out that it still might be racially motivated, because for all we know, these are two separate bombers who don't even know each other, and one is just copying the other one. And the copycat might be just doing it indiscriminately, but the first guy it still might be racial. So we don't know. We have very little information, and the police aren't telling us what they know. Okay, they're keeping they're keeping things quiet, which is what they always do, because they don't want the criminals a lot of times to know what they know, so they don't release everything in the public. But even the Roots, the group The Roots, were supposed to perform at South by Southwest in Austin over the weekend, and that had to be canceled because of a bomb threat. And it's very interesting that they had a bomb threat against the Roots, and you have plenty of white acts at South by Southwest, but when it came to the Roots, all of a sudden there was a bomb threat. That again tells you that there's definitely a level of racial animus to this. We don't know who is behind this, though. We do not know anything about the culprit. So that's important to understand as well. Me personally, again, this is my speculation. I think it's definitely tied to a militia. And this is why I wanted to cover this story that I saw in Atlanta Black Star about the militia white supremacists who were plotting to detonate a bomb to kill Somali immigrants. So I'm gonna read this article to you. So, months after the 2016 general election, members of a Kansas militia group that prosecutors say came to be known as the Crusaders met in an office to pick the targets of bombings that they hoped would inspire a wave of attacks on Muslims throughout the United States. Okay, so this shows you, this is me talking now, this shows you that a lot of these bombings, even if this recent incident in even if this recent incident in Austin, Texas, even if it's not racially motivated, a lot of these white supremacists are plotting attacks against black people all over the country. Okay, that still goes on regardless of what turns out to be the truth in Austin. We just need to be mindful of that. So continuing, in a business in the southwestern city of Liberal that sold mobile homes, the four men took precautions to avoid getting caught, putting their cell phones in a separate room and locking the door to prevent anyone from walking in on them. Three of them didn't know that the fourth was wearing a wire as part of a federal investigation that would thwart their alleged plot. Authorities say that on the day after Election Day, they hope to detonate 4 car bombs. Okay, this is some Iraq, Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, ISIS shit. They were going to detonate 4 car bombs outside of a mosque and an apartment complex that was home to Somali refugees who had settled in the meatpacking town of Garden City, which is about 60 miles south of Liberal, where they were meeting, along the Oklahoma border. Okay, so there must be a city or a little town in Kansas called Liberal. Okay, Liberal, Kansas. And they were plotting to do this attack after Election Day in a town called Garden City at a mosque. Okay, complete act of domestic terrorism or attempted domestic terrorism. Jury selection begins Tuesday in the trial of Patrick, and I'm not going to read the names of these white supremacist terrorists, on charges of conspiracy to use a weapon of mass destruction and conspiracy against civil rights. I do not see the term domestic terrorism used anywhere in terms of the charges. Conspiracy to use a WMD and conspiracy against civil rights. Okay, so where's the terrorism charge? See, so once again, this was a bomb plot. Okay, you mean to tell me that they don't have a political motive? That there's no political or racial agenda behind this attack that the police have found to charge terrorism? No, people need to understand this. They are going out of their way to. This is a form of protectionism in many ways. Okay, because by not labeling them terrorists, they allow a lot of these other suspected terrorists and wannabe terrorists to do their dirty deeds and to continue plotting. And there's certain things that aren't being done by the state, by the American government, that could be done and should be done, that's not being done because it's not being labeled as terrorism. Okay, so that's a form of protection. So they'll talk about it's a conspiracy against civil rights, but it's not a conspiracy to commit an act of terrorism. That's bogus. That's completely bogus. They said the prosecutors say the militia's leader also faces an additional weapons-related charge, so weapons charges, and one other person faces charges of lying to the FBI. And they have pleaded not guilty. If convicted of the weapons of mass destruction charge, each could be sentenced to up to life in prison. Okay, but nothing is being done about this politically. And that's why they're not charging them with terrorism. Okay, that's why they're not being charged with terrorism, because if they charge them with terrorism, then that means and that forces them to do something about this politically. Okay, and that's what they do not want to do. They do not want to make any political moves against the white supremacists en masse. Okay, it's deeply, deeply problematic. I'm not sure if this is still recording, but my computer just started acting real funny style. Real funny style. Hold on one second. My computer just froze. This has never happened before. I'm not sure if I'm still recording right now. I'm not sure if y'all can hear me on Periscope and YouTube, but my whole entire screen is not black, but it's frozen. And I'm not even just talking about one browser. I'm talking about the whole computer. Okay, give me 1 second. If y'all can hear me, I'm actually going to have to restart my computer, because I'm not sure what the hell is going on. So I will be right back.